This is about defending democracy. This is no longer Democrats versus Republicans. What do you want your kids to believe in? There must be give and take.
This is White Flag with Joe Walsh.
We can't ignore him. We just can't make that mistake. We cannot ignore Donald Trump and think that we can defeat him in this election. That's not going to happen. That's not possible. That's not the way it's going to happen. You can't ignore him. You've got to put a spotlight on him. Every single thing he says, you must follow. You must broadcast. Every stupid, every insane, every ignorant, every cruel, every hateful, every violent, every dishonest, every authoritarian, every bullying thing, everything he says must be put out there. It's the only way I think we'll beat him this year. Look, I've seen some scary polling in the last week or so, and I don't hang my hat on horse race polls. I generally try to dive down underneath the horse race number and look at some of the more in-depth questions that are asked, and some of the more kind of focus group sorts of surveys that we see out there. And I saw a couple last week. People have forgotten what the Trump presidency was like. We're 3.5 years removed from it. And people have forgotten. Most Americans have forgotten how batshit crazy, how chaotic, how embarrassing, how incompetent, how dangerous those years were. Sitting down with voters, they had a hard time recalling all the batshit, bad shit stuff Trump did. They didn't remember. Not surprising. It's been 3.5 years. This was always one of my big concerns. Is that unlike, right after he left office, while he was president, every day, his badness, his horribleness, his dishonesty was put in front of us, was put in our grill every single day when he was president. And that's primarily the reason why he lost in 2020. The American people just grew sick of it, grew tired of it, began to realize how bad and dangerous he was and it was for our country. But that's when he was president. That's when this shit was thrown into our faces every single day. And even right after he got out of office, it was still with us. It was still with us. But then a year goes by, 2 years go by, 3 years go by, now 3.5 years go by. And there's real consistent survey work out there that shows that most Americans have kind of forgotten what the Trump presidency was like. Now, it's up to the Biden campaign and it's up to other people to remind the American people exactly what Trump was like, but that's not going to be 100% sufficient. What will be sufficient is what we all have to do. We all have to experience how bad he is, how dishonest he is, how cruel he is, how often he incites violence. We have to experience that every day. This is going to be the longest general election campaign we've had in a long, long time, and the tendency is going to be you're going to want to turn away. You're not going to want to pay attention to him. And those of you who do pay attention to politics every day and you're engaged, fully engaged, and you're into this stuff, you are not the typical American voter. The typical American voter out there is the one I'm talking about right now. They're the ones who need to purposely put him in front of themselves every single day. If we ignore what Trump says, if we turn away, if we ignore how he incites cruelty and hatred and violence every fucking time he speaks, if we ignore it, he'll get reelected. Because it's up to each of us to pay attention to every single word he says. It's up to each of us to put a spotlight on every word he says. And it's up to each of us then to spread that out to everybody we know. Because everybody we know needs to be reminded constantly of who he is. And if people remember, if people know, if people are visibly shaken, again, rightly, by who he is come November, he'll be defeated. But we have to do that. So don't look away at the shit he says at his next rally or next TV interview. Don't look away. Highlight every dangerous, ugly, cruel, hateful, violent thing he says. Put a spotlight on it and share that. Spread that on every platform you're on to everybody you know. That's how we defeat him. I'm Joe Walsh. Make it a good week. Joe Walsh White Flag at gmail.com. Joe Walsh White Flag at gmail.com. That's all one word. Joe Walsh White Flag. Be brave.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow White Flag with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been White Flag with Joe Walsh.